Welcome to the awards. Tonight is finals night where we're going to go through each of our 7 categories and announce the winner. I'm really looking forward to this. Okay, just to give you a little bit of background, the annual awards was concepted a few months back, and it was a community effort by not only ourselves here in the team at Beasts of War, but our community. We wanted to create an awards event where the community was pretty much in 100% control over who got in and who would win. So we put out our annual survey where those that completed the survey were given the opportunity to nominate different companies under the different categories.
Which is great because we didn't choose the nominees.
No.
Yep, the public did.
Yeah. So they selected all their nominees. We had thousands of nominations that came in. We then distilled that down into the actual nomination blocks for each category. At which point it then went back out to the public vote. We have had thousands upon thousands of votes on these categories. That was then distilled down into 4 finalists for each category and has led us here tonight to announcing our winners.
Again, all picked by the public.
All picked by the public. So if you're watching this and you're screaming at your screen going, no, they don't deserve to win, or why weren't they in the nominations? You know what to do. If you didn't vote, make sure you vote next year. And if you did vote, get more of your friends to vote next year.
And if you perhaps forgot to nominate, make sure and nominate someone that you think deserves it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
because you can't vote for them if they're not there.
I think we've had a really good spread of nominations. You know, we were wondering how the whole approach of genres rather than the different types of game would work, and we think it's worked very well. You know, so by allowing people to focus on what was their best sci-fi game, what was their best historical game, it brought role-playing, card games, board games. It brought it all together in the mix and gave us a real nice insight into what people are playing, or maybe more accurately, what people value in the industry at the moment. Anyway, without further ado, we're going to get on with the show. Tonight, we're going to be swapping in and out team members as we discuss each of the categories and announce the winners. So, without further ado, I think it's time to move on to our first category. The finalists for Best Sculpt of 2014 are CORVUS BELLI, ANTIPODES, Forge World, WARMASTER HORUS, CORVUS BELLI, Hak Islam, Motorized Troops, Harry Miniatures, Foot Knights, 1450, 1500. So there we have our finalists for Best Sculpt. An important category.
Oh, yes.
A category that we introduced specifically to start trying to readdress something that both ourselves and members of the community feel, in that sculptors don't get enough recognition.
Very true.
Let me list them just to get our thoughts on them, okay? So kicking off with the Infinity Antipodes, Sam.
Oh, these are brilliant. They're a resculpt of a previous model, and I love them. They look far more lupine and brutal now.
Yeah. I gotta say, I'm just a huge fan of werewolves. I know I'm gonna lower the tone of the whole thing here, but you know, I looked at them. They're ferocious. They're terrifying. You know, they just look like they would rip you to pieces. And every time I look at them, I just want to go, I just absolutely love them. Next up, John, we had the WARMASTER HORUS.
Beautiful sculpt. Absolutely amazing. And it's the icing on the cake of the whole Primarch series that they've been doing over there in Forge World. And just Forge World in general have been brilliant with their sculpts, but Horus
it's so
really
cinematic, isn't it?
It really is. And it's exactly how you imagine Horus when you're reading the books.
Yes, very much so.
They've got all the details on his armor down to a T, and then when you see the model, you go, that's exactly what I expected.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant.
It's it's a great model for a great series. So, Forge World's push into the whole Warhammer 30K, as we're calling it, or the Horus or pre-heresy stuff, it has been absolutely amazing. And it's going from strength to strength, and it's gaining a really strong following. So I really loved it. Really loved it. Next up, we had another nomination for Infinity.
Yeah.
So Infinity actually made it into the finalists twice, which I think was interesting. And it shows the caliber of what Corvus Belli are doing at the moment. This one was the Infinity Hak-Islam cum motorized troops.
I love these miniatures. See, these are another resculpt, and I own the originals, which were little mono-wheel guys. And yeah, they were a lot of fun. But these miniatures just show the character of the unit so much more, and they look just so cool.
I think the word you're looking for is badass.
Summed up in 2 syllables.
For me, these miniatures signified a huge turning point, I feel, in Infinity. These were these were effectively the announcement that we are changing the visual style. We're evolving Infinity now.
Yep.
We're taking a lot of the anime influenced stuff we have, but now introducing a much stronger, more brutal style to our sculpting, with bigger plates, more opportunity for painting, and for really going to town on your painting. And this particular unit, I think, for me, was probably one of the most exciting things, probably the most exciting thing for Infinity over 2014. Even more so than the 2-player starter set, which was a huge announcement and development in itself.
Yep.
But this particular model, I think, really set the tone for where Infinity is headed, as far as I'm concerned. Finally, we have the Perry Miniatures Foot Knights, 1450 to 1900.
1900?
Sorry, 1500. Well, anybody that knows me knows that me and history, well, we have a kind of a love-hate relationship. Fabulous sculpts done by the Perrys.
Yeah.
We expect nothing less. But what were your specific thoughts on them, Sam?
Perry have been making some of the best ancient history models on the market at present, and I think these are the best ones to display it because they've managed to give each individual foot soldier a distinct sense of character and make them look like an individual rather than just faceless grunt number 2 in the unit.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, that was our nominees. It's a very special category for us. This year we had each sculpt according to their company. We're hoping next year we can start to name individual sculptors. So we hope as a community you will help us get on top of that and give these sculptors the recognition they deserve. Because on the topic of the Perrys, who knows, maybe next year we might have Smaug in the list because it was sculpted by one of the Perrys. I believe Michael Perry sculpted that. So who knows what will happen. Right, without further ado, the winner is here. I think it's time to announce the winner. So the winner of the 2014 Annual Gaming Awards Best Sculpt is Forge World's WARMASTER HORUS. Our hearty congratulations to the guys over at Forge World. Well done on a spectacular piece. Stay tuned because we have lots more winners coming right up. The finalists for Best Paint Job of 2014 are Angel Heraldez, Coom Riders, Ohun, World Eaters Contemptor Dreadnought, Romain Lapat, The Last Light, Jeremy Bonat-Thibault, Enchantress. So there we have it. That's our 4 finalists for the painting category. There are a ton of brilliant painting contests out there.
Yep.
We have the Golden Demons, we have the Crystal Brush, But this is our way to be able to get the best of all of them and hand it over to the community and say, go out, find what you believe was the best paint job of the year. Let us know, and we'll let everybody vote on it.
They found some stonking ones this year.
Well, let's talk about them. Kicking off, we had the Coom Riders by Ángel Heraldez. John.
Mr. Heraldez, stop. Please. The more I see of your work, the less likely I am to pick up a brush ever again. It's stunning.
Incredible.
It is really stunning. The fire effect on the bodywork of the bike and the tattoos, which everyone in the studio has said, you know, you could make tanks look cooler with tattoos. And
well, John,
sorry.
It is armor.
Oh, Lord.
Oh God! All right. Oh well. Anyway, that's the second category that this particular model has been in, because it was also in Best Sculpt. And it's made it through the Angel's paint job has made it through to the finalists of painting. You know, let's not discount the importance of this piece. All the technical aspects of it aside, you know, this piece, as I'd said in sculpting, has had a huge effect on the industry in terms of people's view of Infinity, and what it raised Angel's game a whole other level. You know, the skin tones and the brutality of these particular miniatures. He just captured it. He absolutely nailed it.
I think Mr. Heraldez is also Mr. Infinity, because he has brought the visual style to life.
Very much so.
Yeah, very.
Okay, next up we have the World Eaters Contemptor Dreadnought by Bohan. What did you think, Sam?
This is a superbly intricate miniature. I mean, if you just look at the detail of the filigree and the weathering on display, you can't help but be impressed by this.
John, for those of us that we might be, I don't know, Neanderthals, what is filigree?
It's taking something and adding a very nice fine detail to it, but like engraving on a ring could be counted as filigree. You'd see it on very important people's swords or knives, blades, anything like that. Just tiny little details like vines or leaves, anything sort of nice and draws the attention. Most of the time it was a symbol of status or wealth. You would have all your armor done up in all this filigree.
The Contemptor pattern is a heresy era dreadnought.
And this one in particular is a World Eaters pre-heresy dreadnought.
Yeah.
And it has a very, almost sort of a Greek mosaic kind of style to it.
There's something very classical about it.
It feels very classical while still having the brutality and brutal weathering of a war machine, which is very interesting in its own little style.
Fantastic. We then move on to another kind of a 40k or Warhammer 40k inspired entry, and that's The Last Light by Romain Lapat. Sam?
This is a superb diorama. There's just so much going on here that I love this thing, because you look at it and you know there's an epic story behind it.
Yeah.
I think it looks like a guy had too many Blood Angels and too many Tyranids and just went, what can I make with this? And he turned it into a masterpiece. He really did.
Yeah. It's incredible, though. You know, the way he's captured what, to me anyway, looked like the final moments of a handful of Space Marines. You know, they're not getting out of that. I'm a Tyranid player. I'm telling you, they're not getting out of that. but the way he captures that, you know, there's every now and again we see a kind of a Last Stand type diorama, and they're always a very powerful thing. This one in particular, though, I think he nailed it. He nailed it just so well.
There's always a lot of inspiration from the art, because a lot of the 40k art, like when you have the book and you look through it, there is a lot of Last Stand in there, and it does entice a lot of emotional side to it, because you look at them and you go, I know they're going to die. I want to make something as cool as that and put it into model form, and the results are fantastic all the time.
And then our final finalist was the Enchantress by Jeremy Bonamont-Tebol. Yes, I am going to spend this entire evening butchering people's names and pronouncing things terribly, so get used to that. What did we think?
This was another great diorama, but for me what really stood out was the lighting and the glow effects on the miniature itself.
The you're going to ask me on the technical side of
Yeah.
things.
Tell us your wisdom, oh
the,
John.
the blending, the highlighting, the color palette as well. If Roman was sat here, Roman will be all over the color palette and talking wax lyrical about that. But it's the color choices are fantastic, and at an initial glance, I found it a little busy. But that's just me coming from looking at tanks, and tanks are pretty in
Green.
your face. Green and in your face.
Yeah.
So when I see something nice and delicate, I go, "What is it?" But the main character in it is beautifully made, and the scenic base itself, there's about as much attention to detail in that as there is the actual center part of the model, and
it just ticked all the boxes.
it ticks all the boxes for me. Yeah, it's brilliant.
Okay, well, without further ado, I think we're going to find out who our winner is. 2014's been an amazing year for painting. And this little category is our opportunity to allow the community to sum it all up. Well, now it's going to come to its climax. And the winner of Best Paint Job for 2014 is Angel Heraldez and the Coom Riders. Congratulations, Angel. Your Coom Riders have definitely left their mark on the industry. Okay, I think now we'll move on to our next category. The finalists for Best Sci-Fi Game of 2014 are Hawk War Games, DROPZONE Commander, CORVUS BELLI, Infinity, Fantasy Flight, Star Wars X-Wing, Mantic Games, DEADZONE. So those are our finalists for the Best Sci-Fi Game category. If ever there was a category that was going to cause controversy, I didn't think this would be it, but it certainly has. DROPZONE Commander, Infinity, Star Wars X-Wing, and DEADZONE. What is missing?
40K!
What the hell?
And when we got over the shock of that, what do you say?
Accept it. The four that have made it are great games. You know, they are fantastic games. You can't deny it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've got to say, whenever we envisaged the awards and we broke it into genres, I was a little reserved on the sci-fi category.
You expected 40K to dominate.
I thought it was going to walk it. I
Yeah.
thought it was absolutely going to walk it. I'm not sure what happened. You know, could we say that that we have less 40K viewers? Our traffic doesn't say so, because our 40K content, what we do is the most traffic content on the site.
I think it's just our gamers are more diverse.
And Warhammer, WARMASTER HORUS won Best Sculpt.
Oh yeah.
And
Which
Warhammer,
is interesting. So it's not like there's a lack of 40K stuff.
yeah,
Happening and people enjoying.
and Warhammer Fantasy.
It's a finalist.
It was a finalist, and it was a finalist. I will say that if I can remember correctly, it scored nearly twice as much as its next nearest rival as well. You know, it's so it's a curveball for us. I thought we were going to be sitting here talking about 40K, and we have in fact been sitting here talking about 40K.
So
But,
maybe you can do too many things though in
Yeah.
a franchise. But by the end of the year, nothing sticks out in your mind because you did so many things.
No, I would say it's just our gamers are so diverse now. People are such multi-system players. They just, yes, they'll still love their 40K, but they'll love the four we've
but-
got here more.
Can you
Well-
think of the standout moments for 40K this year?
Insane release schedule.
Exactly, that's
Brand
my
new
point.
logo.
Are you saying maybe it's too much of a burn
Just
through?
bam, 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 hitting you all
No
year
time to
long,
breathe.
and
Maybe.
nothing
Maybe.
standing out beyond the rest.
Well, I suppose Fantasy has the end times. Maybe 40K needed something similar.
perhaps
It's a possibility.
Perhaps. Right. 40K. You didn't even make it. But let's talk about the guys that did. We'll start with DROPZONE Commander from Hawk War Games. Big year for those guys.
Yes.
Now, that is a company that is really starting to ramp up.
They're taking humongous steps. Doing starter sets in plastic now, that's a
Yeah.
huge step for any company.
Oh, to see that Shaltari and PHR stuff in plastic.
Oh yeah,
Absolutely fabulous.
gorgeous.
For me, the standout defining moment for Hawk War Games this year, hiring a dedicated artist.
Yes,
I think
Patrice.
we're really
Yes,
starting
fantastic.
to see the effects of that, because one of the great things about a game is when you can start to buy in to the whole background of it.
Feeling like you can live in the world.
And what better way to do that than to get beautiful, incredible art? in
Yeah.
front of
I'm
people.
totally on board with this. Up until a couple of years ago, I'd have said, "Nah, minis all the way. Don't need background."
Yeah,
noise."
but
Something's
years
changed
ago,
in my
you would have
mind.
said 10 mil. What?
Something's changed in my mind where I'm like, I want fluff and I want art. You know the
Yeah.
way I used to say to you, I'm not.
No,
not
no,
interested in
it's all
art,
the
just
rules.
show me the
I don't
minis."
care about reading about the background of my Tau.
I've kind of flipped.
Yeah, it does happen though.
Now it has to have interesting background and stuff.
Yeah.
But
Well, the
it's
great
because-
thing about art is, you know, they say the old adage, you know, a picture speaks 1,000 words.
and truly it does with some of this stuff.
Truly it does. You know, a great piece of art can instill emotions and can hammer home the
feel of a faction.
feel of a background of the whole background. You know, not just a faction, but of the sense of conflict.
Yeah.
You know, in that particular game. So anyway, I think it's a massive step for those guys. Next up, we have Infinity from Corvus Belli.
I think it was a heck of a year for Infinity. They were on fire.
Well, I mean, like they had Ice Storm, they had N3, they had everything.
Now, you see, the thing about Infinity is, do you know the way I was saying with 40k, maybe they hit you with too many things?
Yeah.
Infinity have a great release schedule. They come out with brand new
X
minis
number of minis every
every
month, yeah.
month.
Yeah.
But the two big standout things that spring to my mind this year,
Yeah,
with the box set and the N3 rules.
Yes.
yeah.
Although what you're saying about their releases, they're not doing it all for one faction, I think is the key to that. So they're not hitting you with a ton of stuff to buy. It's, oh, there's a new mini from my faction. I'm going out to get that this month.
Yes.
You know, so you have time to digest.
It's a gradual growth.
Yes, even though it seems like a lot, it's
You,
spread out enough.
you don't feel like you've been made redundant. I have all the crap units. I need to go and get a whole lot of new units.
Exactly. It's just, oh, there's a new one for me. My new character's out. Yes, give it.
We cannot understate, though, the importance of Operation Ice Storm.
Oh,
the
definitely.
two-player starter set. First two-player starter set that game has ever had. The game has been around for 10 years now.
Yep.
You know, it's been long overdue, and you know it has bust all its targets.
Well worth the wait, in my
You know,
mind. Well
it
worth
was
the
a
wait.
great starter set, an absolutely brilliant starter set.
And the other thing about those two ranges is the fact that they've introduced accessible terrain.
Yes.
DROPZONE Commander has its buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and Infinity also has its card buildings in the
Yeah.
box.
Yep.
It's very difficult to pick between the two now, between DROPZONE Commander and Operation Ice Storm as the best starter box in the business, because they're both.
I'd hate
there.
to try and answer that question. I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's.
It would take me a while to go away and figure out which one.
Honestly, this is where your fluff's going to come in, because you're going to read the background and say, this is the world I want to live in.
Yeah.
That's what
Yeah.
I would say.
Next one, a huge one. Star Wars X-Wing from Fantasy Flight. Probably the fastest growing game in the market.
Yep.
Dominating US sales. You can barely get the stuff in Europe. It's like hen's teeth.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had your kerfuffle with Argos this year. You bought 6 of them. They didn't deliver a single one.
I got zilch.
Well, you got your money back.
This year.
But it's got such pick up off the shelf, you want me appeal, that game.
Yes,
Yeah.
you know, I remember the first time that I saw the Millennium Falcon sitting on the shelf, and I just went, "Oh,
That's mine."
Yeah, I felt the same thing recently around the summertime when I went and I had a look and I saw the Blockade Runner.
Oh, yeah,
and I
yeah,
just-
the big ships they've
I
done.
was, I
But you see,
so
with them
want
doing the
that.
pre-paints, they're actually able to do that window into the box. So you can pick it up and turn the box and start to look in and around and sort of see some of the details.
Yeah,
And you're
these
going,
for
"I want
me
that in my
are
hands."
probably the finest pre-paints in the market.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pre-painted game done absolutely right.
Mm-hmm.
The game mechanics are perfectly tuned. You know, it's a great game.
They're light, fast, and deep.
Yeah.
Is the easy
It's
way to describe it.
a superb game, massive growth, and with the new Star Wars movie coming out in basically to coincide with Beasts of War's 2015 awards.
Oh.
What are we going to see next year? I reckon we're going to see tons. And in terms of Fantasy Flight taking on the Star Wars franchise, we have Star Wars Armada. We have the Star Wars kind of the miniatures game that they're working on as well. We have tons of stuff.
Yeah.
Tons of stuff.
Yeah.
And then finally, our last finalist is DEADZONE from Mantic Games. Now, DEADZONE, this was their kind of entrance year. This was where people started to get their stuff. There's been a lot of continuous development on the likes of the terrain and stuff like that. And the game itself seems to be building a really good following. I've got to say, the rulebook is a bit hard to digest. You know, this is all stuff that I think Mantic are well aware of.
I think this is it's for a seasoned war gamer.
Yeah.
You know, this is something you love your sci-fi. I want a big box of terrain. I want a big box of minis. I want to build my world and rock and roll.
DEADZONE was received with an epic amount of excitement, though.
Oh yeah,
Wasn't it the DEADZONE Kickstarters that they were shipping at Mantic Open Day when we were there?
Yes.
The guys just walking out with ginormous boxes
yeah. It
of
was
this
just
stuff.
queue after queue of people just trying to get their Kickstarter stuff on the day they're at Mantic.
But let's look at DEADZONE. You know, DEADZONE ultimately, we reckon, is going to be the lead-in for Warpath. Okay, DEADZONE is going to lead people into this sci-fi mass battle game that's going to be enormous in every way. But look how flexible a big part of it is. You look at the battle zones terrain and stuff like that came out of DEADZONE, and how flexible that is. It wouldn't matter what sci-fi game you're playing. I'd quite happily play Infinity on that.
Yep.
I'd play 40k on that.
Yep. And if you were wanting to do a sci-fi dungeon crawler, ta-da!
You've got everything you need
build
there.
your tracks.
But it doesn't stop there. I'd play Dust with it, to be honest, as well.
Fair enough. It's the right
Yeah.
size for it, I think. The other thing is the game itself has legs because they're beginning to bring out extra factions for DEADZONE.
Yeah.
So we're starting to see the Brockers come in, the Asterians are coming in. So it's not just a game that's going to go, okay, you've played this for a while, now you're going to play the proper game. This is a game that has its own legs.
Yeah.
Well, it did so well at Kickstarter.
Exactly.
You know, it was already fleshed out. You know,
Exactly.
But the beauty of it is, at the beginning of this incoming year now, it's coming back to Kickstarter.
It is.
Mantic have big plans for it, so we can only wait and see where it's headed.
What I like most about it is like the gaming mat. And once you lay down the gaming mat, it doesn't take up very much space to have a really intuitive, fun game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That
and
you can
have
then
a nicely,
leapfrog into the Warpath universe from it.
and you can have a nicely complex sort of gaming surface to play on with that modular terrain because you can play different levels and stuff. I remember at Salute they built a vertical board out of that stuff, and I think it was maybe 20 levels high of this stuff,
Yeah.
but it was only one wide. You were fighting up and down and across corridors, and it was great. It was like an old 2D platformer.
Yeah, and the mechanics worked well for that as well.
Exactly.
Well, there we have it. That is our 4 finalists for the sci-fi category. The sci-fi category, I might add, that didn't have Warhammer 40k in it.
I think we
What
may have
can
already
you
mentioned
say?
that once or twice.
Right. I think it's now time to find out who our winner is. So this is it. This is the big category. Best sci-fi game of 2014. And the winner is Corvus Belli's Infinity. Congratulations to those guys over in sunny Spain. You have absolutely amazed us this year in 2014. So, how are you going to raise your game in 2015? Okay, I think now we'll move on to our next category. The finalists for Best Fantasy Game of 2014 are Games Workshop, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Wizards of the Coast, Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, Privateer Press, Hordes and Warmachine, Mantic Games, Kings of War. Okay, I'm joined in the studio by Sam and Justin. Gents, they are our 4 finalists. So let's wax lyrical a little bit about these guys. Okay, so kicking off, we have Warhammer Fantasy Battles from Games Workshop.
Oh,
Big
the
year
stuff.
for them, Sam.
Yes. The end times have come upon us.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't much more we can say that we haven't already said about this.
Yeah.
But it's just
But we're going to anyway.
It's brought new life to Warhammer Fantasy.
Well, it's definitely set it up for a revitalization. You know, I wouldn't exactly say that fantasy has revitalized at this stage. It's certainly engaged a lot of players. You know, we can only guess how many because everything sells out so bloody quickly now. But we've got to remember, this whole thing is about setting up for the revitalization. So the icing hasn't even landed yet. You know, it's,
the cake's there, it's looking delicious and spongy, and you're waiting for the icing on it.
Absolutely. And remember, it all kicked off with that evil man, Nagash.
Yes.
His triumphant return.
It certainly looks like it. Okay, we also had Dungeons & Dragons 5th massive update from Wizards of the Coast. It looked like they were losing a little bit of ground to Pathfinder.
Yeah.
But D&D 5th looks like it's all set to at least recapture our hearts, and most likely potentially recapture the market as well.
D&D was a game that I was starting to fall out of favor with in favor of games like the World of Darkness series, because there was a far more of a focus on narrative there. And then 5th edition came along and gave D&D the narrative focus that I love. And it's become one of my favorite role-playing games.
It's certainly making a lot of waves. All of the books now required to play are out and available. So, you know, if you want to get stuck into that, there's a ton that you can do. There's also narrative campaigns and stuff taking place.
Tyranny of the Dragon, I think it's called. And it's happening across D&D's multiple platforms, including things like the Neverwinter MMO, I believe.
So a lot of opportunities to enjoy Dungeons & Dragons at the moment. Next up, we have from Privateer Press, it had to be in there, it's Hordes and Warmachine.
Yeah, this has been another great year for them because they got the game, which tied into the books for the Warmachine side. So we've now got journeyman warcasters for each faction.
Now, this is the video game you're talking about, is it?
The video game has then transferred onto the tabletop with those journeyman warcasters. And now Hordes has its next book out, Exigence, and now the Warlocks sort of have their lower level Warlock, the lesser Warlock or journeyman Warlock, if you want to call them that, who are now giving Hordes players that tactical option as well. That, and it's really bringing the story along. I've been reading through the Exigence book, and you're seeing people are growing, evolving, and changing. So it's not just a static game. There is a timeline running through with it, which is brilliant.
Yeah, it's certainly a game that Privateer Press are really investing in terms of widening the background, pushing it forward. You know, we have the whole RPG side in the Iron Kingdoms, which is shaping up to be absolutely fabulous.
It's a beautiful game, and again, it interconnects with the other two with a few slight tweaks. You can actually house rule it to bring your character from the RPG onto the tabletop, and I think that's beautiful.
That's always a good move.
Okay, and our final finalist was Kings of War from Mantic Games. A big year for those guys.
Yep,
very.
They've had their big Kickstarter. They're going for the second gen rules. I mean, like they funded 2 armies, wasn't it? Nature and Abyss. So we're going to see the demons and the treemen coming out. This is going to be great.
To be fair, rules for Nature and Abyss, I believe, have existed previously, but now we're going to see the miniatures.
Yeah, I can't wait to see some of the big fire demons that Ronnie was showing off earlier in the year. They look beautiful.
Well, it's certainly a game that is been growing a lot in popularity among fantasy players, especially tournament players. It seems to be gaining a lot of traction on the tournament scene. I think in part because of Alessio Cavatori's early decision in the game that he would design it that it could be played with a chess clock. It immediately started to make itself, I don't know, very suitable to the tournament scene.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that you're not having to remove individual miniatures and things like that in this game also makes it great for tournament players because it's fast, it's brutal, and it's easy to transfer
mass
stuff
battle. Simple as that, and it runs beautifully.
And scales very well. It scales very well.
It scales ridiculously well. I mean, I've seen a 20-foot table with 40,000 point game being played, and it was done in an afternoon.
Yeah. Well, guys, that is kind of sums up the finalists. Now, I think it's time to announce the winner. So the 4 big hitters of fantasy gaming have went head-to-head in a public vote. There can be only one. And our winner is Privateer Press's War Machine and Hordes. Massive congratulations goes over to the guys at Privateer Press. We know that 2015 is also going to be another massive, massive year for this franchise. Okay, I think now we will move on to our next category. The finalists for Best Accessory of 2014 are Vallejo Game Air, Foreground Fabled Realms, Battle Systems Sci-fi Terrain, Mantic Games Battle Zones. So there we have it, Lloyd and Justin. Those are our 2014 Best Accessory
I think
finalists.
surprising choices. I mean,
think
I'm
so?
a little surprised for what was in there. I was surprised by at least one of them.
Well,
No,
I don't know.
wasn't.
2014's been like the year of terrain.
Yeah.
There's been so
Which
much
one were you
terrain stuff
surprised
coming
by?
out.
The Vallejo Model Air.
Oh, absolutely not. Oh, it's fabulous. It is fabulous. But
It
I'll
is
tell you what,
fabulous,
let's
but-
talk about Vallejo Model Air.
Yeah.
Or Vallejo Game Air. Okay.
Game Air, yes.
So Vallejo have had this successful range called Vallejo Model Air for a while now. Okay, it's a direct match to their model paints.
Yeah, the
it's-
model color.
Yes, it's all geared towards scale models. So it's a lot of drab colors.
It's
and
very
things like that.
realistic, down to earth colors.
When I say drab, I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I just mean that it's
You mean
it's
like
the drabs.
the flat camos you'll see the need for
Yeah.
World War II tanks and stuff.
So they have another range called Vallejo Game Range,
Yeah.
and people have been crying out to see this created into a version for airbrushing.
Yeah.
So Vallejo, they've been
Applies.
working away on grinding down the pigments to get the pigments to be a lot finer.
Mm-hmm.
They've been working on the mixes and everything so that it still matches
Mm-hmm.
the other range, but it's perfect for airbrushing.
Which is the key thing. It is brilliant to be able to be airbrushing, and then later on you're sitting thinking, I'll brush something,
yeah.
but I want to use exactly the same color, and just go, I used that. There it is. Lift it out, and away you go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's
handy.
with Vallejo. You know, what we have found over the last years of using them is we've never been able to fault the quality of,
Yep.
of the paints.
Well, over the last years, I have slowly just been converting my entire painting collection to Vallejo.
Yeah.
I still have a ways to go yet because it's a big range.
It's a
You can
massive
get any
range.
color under the sun.
It's a massive range. So actually, no, I'm not surprised to see them in there.
Well,
you know,
as-
once I saw they were nominated, I thought, yeah, I reckon that they could make it up into the finals.
Well,
so.
as Lloyd said, this has been the year of terrain. So whenever I
It
was looking at it, I
certainly
was
has.
thinking terrain all the way.
Yeah, it certainly has. So let's look at some of the other entries or other finalists. We have, of course, the foreground fantasy buildings.
Mordenberg. Beautiful. They have done a cracking job on these.
I
I
like-
actually got a chance to build some of these, and they're great.
I like the fact that it's fantasy, and it didn't all end up all being sci-fi terrain.
Yeah.
These buildings are just, they're so much fun to build.
Yes.
Yes.
I sat down with my other half, and we built one together, and even she had fun doing that.
Do you know what I think is one of the key features of them? It's not only that they're fun to build. I think that fun stems from the fact that they're very satisfying to build. Because when they're built, they're done.
And they're beautiful.
You're not building these things and then thinking, oh, now I have to start painting them.
Yes, and I have a flat wall to paint.
Because they're all pre-colored, you know, when they're built, that's it. You can just use them that way for the rest of your days. Or if you want to go and start weathering them, stuff like that, you can do that. But when they're built, they're done. It's a very satisfying thing to be able to do that and have a very solid piece of terrain.
Yeah, that and the
at the
fact
end
that
of it.
they have internal details as well. I mean, like if you look at the inn with all its staircases and internal corridors and rooms and stuff, it's fantastic.
The styling's nice too, though,
Yeah,
because you could build buildings like that and be historically. They do lots of historical buildings, don't get me wrong, but this particular fantasy range has a quirkiness to it.
Yes.
They're almost, it's not the right word, but they're almost cute looking.
they're almost fable-esque.
But when you've finished looking at or building it, you just like looking at them.
They do have a very fable feel to them.
Yeah,
you know,
it's just that slightly skewed angles and stuff on them, and it's perfect.
I must admit now, with the possibility of the likes of Warhammer Fantasy, becoming more skirmishy, these buildings are right at the forefront of my mind.
What a good valid point that is, because playing in around all the buildings and stuff.
I'm thinking even for D&D 5th edition, for doing stories inside your inn where you're actually going to get your quests and stuff.
Yeah.
If you have a good DM, you can set that up, set it out on the table, everybody's just running around the inn, you can actually see where you are, what you're doing.
Is this the big
This is
building
the
you're
big
talking
inn,
about?
yeah. I want to use that in a game of D&D 5th. Even if it's just the setup at the beginning of the evening, I think that would just make for an epic evening's gaming because it drops you into that world beautifully.
It certainly is an amazing product. Okay, we also have the Battle Systems Sci-Fi Terrain. Now, this was their first Kickstarter. They had been doing print and build stuff
and
before
play
that.
stuff.
Papercraft.
They then went to Kickstarter to create a pre-cut, pre-printed card sci-fi system. Now, we had this in the studio, and it was fabulous. It was really, really interesting. Once you started to put it together,
Once you had the knack of where certain bits went, you were just off and flying.
and you had so many options for how it could all fit together. And it really was a very, very interesting product. I've got to say, I love the detail of it.
Yeah, the print quality is brilliant.
Yeah, and for 2015, it looks set to get even better because they're bringing their fantasy version of it, which we saw some of the prototypes for, and it looked absolutely brilliant.
Which is exciting stuff, because when we'd all built up in the studio, you couldn't help but look at it and go, I have to get playing on this. I have to get out of my way. I have to play on this.
Absolutely.
The other thing is the actual way they've made it. Once you've built your sub-assemblies, get yourself a hard bag, set it all inside that in its sub-assemblies, take it out at the gaming club. You're not carrying around a mountain of resin on your back.
That's why I
Light
do
and
it.
transportable.
It's a good tip to build like a section of wall, a section of walkway, and just sort of slot them together.
Your sub-assemblies, because once you have those built, you're there, you're pulling out your sub-assemblies and you're building them.
Yeah.
And it's perfect. It's a great system.
Okay, our last finalist is Semantic Games Battlezone Terrain, or what they should probably have tried to get the trademark is Wargaming Lego.
There's no other way to describe this. It's so customizable. It's insane. At that, and they're just planning more and more and more different ways to put it together.
Yeah, it's what can you say about this stuff? The only thing it's lacking is it doesn't come in different colors. If it came in different colors,
You would be like a schoolboy.
You absolutely would. We have used this to great effect. You were put together buildings so quickly. Earlier in the year, myself and James Hewitt got together.
Yeah,
and
sat
actually,
down and had no plan, just went at it.
we just clipped out a whole bunch of stuff and just went for it.
But it's essentially made up of square panels that make
Yeah.
cubes. But the end result doesn't look like square cubey buildings. Yes, they've got square edges and stuff. But very rarely do you see someone just build a cube. They build all sorts of weird shapes
Yeah.
and stuff
Yeah,
from
and
it.
then they've actually added different connectors now, so you can do 45-degree angles and stuff. So it breaks up that cubiness even more.
It's a range that will hopefully expand even more during the upcoming Kickstarter for DEADZONE, where I'm told that there's loads of additional outer layer stuff like pipes and stuff.
Yeah,
that
so you can
really
actually take those big long flat areas and add cover up along them.
I think it's a superb system. This for me,
Pipes and stuff sounds really interesting, because then you can start doing them space corridor looks and stuff
Yeah.
with piping down either side and things like that.
this for me is I've got to say is probably my favorite category. Okay, I love all the games and the sculpts and painting and stuff like that there, but I love the diversity of accessories.
Yeah,
You know,
I
'cause
know
this is where we get to
exactly
see
why
all
you
the
do.
cool terrain and stuff. So.
I have one word, and I know exactly why you love this category. Lasers!
Lasers, yes, we even had lasers in the nomination list. It's a great category full of just so many diverse different things that come into it,
Yeah, like the wee flock box thing.
like the flock box.
Yeah.
I was
So-
surprised. I was like, is that really in there? Yeah, it's in there. I can put it in there. Excellent.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think it's now time for us to find out who you voted for to be the winner of Best Accessory of 2014. So it's now time for the moment of truth. The winner of Best Accessory of 2014 is Foreground and Their Fantasy Buildings. A massive congratulations goes over to the guys at Foreground. Well done, fellas. Okay, now we're going to move on to our next category. The finalists for Pulp, Punk, Horror, or Weird Game of 2014 are Weird, MALIFAUX. Guillotine Games, Zombicide. Dust Studio, Dust. Spartan Games, Dystopian Wars. Yes, it's that category where I'm going to have to do my very best to keep Sam and Justin under control.
I'm sorry, it's my favourite of all the genres.
Oh, yes.
Two kids in a candy store. It is, of course, Pulp, Punk, Horror, or Weird. There are finalists, guys, so let's wax lyrical a little bit about them. Let's kick off with MALIFAUX, Sam.
MALIFAUX has got to be one of my favourite skirmish games. It's just got one of the richest backgrounds to it, with the mixture of magic, Cthulhuoid weird stuff, steampunk, cowboys. It's great.
Necromantic, death raising.
Yeah. And this year saw some great stuff for it as well, with Through the Breach, the long-awaited RPG rules coming out, and along with them came the modular kits to build your own character for it, which could then be transferred over to the game.
The MALIFAUX plastics are a thing of beauty.
They're stunning. Yes. I couldn't resist. I had to get a little set of the hired blades, the two Victorias. Lovely.
Yeah. We also saw was it the second edition of the rulebook?
No, we saw its first supplement.
Its first supplement, okay, yep.
Second edition Crossroads, which updated the rules for many of the ones that hadn't made it into the second edition rulebook.
Yeah.
And also brought a few more new ones as well.
Well, one of the things for me that makes MALIFAUX a very special game within the industry is it appeals right across the gender. You know, it's probably one of the games in terms of tactical war games or skirmish games that has the highest proportion of female players.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fantastic thing. There's something about MALIFAUX that really does appeal right across the whole, I don't want to call it the gender divide, but right across genders.
Yes, it's incredibly inclusive, but it's got such a dark and gritty world to it, which I absolutely love. Because some of the minis really just jump out and go, I am a horror piece.
But not without cartoon elements as well. I mean, you've got the whole Gremlins there.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then you have Teddy, you know, the big ass Teddy with the big row of teeth around the front, spiky.
That thing is
Brilliant.
horrifying.
It's brilliant.
Well, some of the games that MALIFAUX has found itself up against, we have a Zombicide from Cool Mini or Not.
I love this game. This is a zombie board game where you are just a random person in the zombie apocalypse trying to survive, getting food, getting resources, basically working your way through a great adventure set. That, and when they went to Kickstarter with it to begin with, they got some really big name characters out there who are this guy, who's actually this guy. You know, so
it has been a huge breakout success.
Oh yeah.
You know, not only has it been huge in terms of Kickstarter, but it's been huge in terms of ongoing retail sales. It has made such an impact in the board game market. It's a phenomenon.
And then it's got tons of expansions too.
Well, not only expansions, it also did something that I thought was fabulous, and it was Cool Mini or Not had teamed up with Army Painter and actually brought out a dedicated paint set specifically aimed at the board game. Now, I haven't seen the likes of that before in the board gaming industry, and I thought something like that was a really, really interesting thing to happen.
Yeah, very cool.
Also this year, in the finalists, we have Dust.
Yeah, it's not unexpected. It has been on fire this year. They have the massive Kickstarter, the whole new scenario they're going into for all of the war comes pre-built, pre-primed.
Yes.
And basically ready to play out of the box. And then you have the different levels of expansion. So you can play tactics, nice, light, easy, quick. Or you can go all the way up to Warfare. Or no, not Warfare now. What's the other one?
Battlefield.
And just really go at it as a true, pure war game.
Yeah.
And it's brilliant.
I had my first game of Dust this year and was struck by just how easy it is to get into and how simple and inclusive it can be for new players.
Yeah.
It's a nice flowing game that just works so well. But it's also a fabulous piece of intellectual property in its own right, in terms of the backstory and the whole alternative setting of World War II is just ripe to be picked at.
Yeah, well, like, if I remember correctly, I think Modifius have even picked it up for a role-playing game.
Yes,
so we'll have to
absolutely.
keep a very tight eye out for whenever that comes.
It's called Dust Adventure.
Yes, so you can actually drop in and start role-playing in the world of Weird World War II, which is brilliant.
And then finally, we have one. I was so glad to see this come in. It's a Dystopian Wars.
Yes.
I love Dystopian Wars. It's got one of my favorite sort of steampunk settings. And it was great to see it get revitalized with its version 2.0 rules coming out this year, as well as a 2-player starter set.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the rules, I believe, are also available for free to download.
Exactly. So
For
if you want to
a number
try
of the
it,
Spartan
go
games.
nuts.
Yeah, Shadow Hunter, the 2-player starter set. It had the Federated States of America and the
Faction.
Empire of the Blazing Sun. A superb game. It's basically, well, I don't want to say it's naval battles because it also has land battles and stuff built in
and
there as
air
well.
battles.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It just is huge.
It's that nice sort of top-down view of the battlefield, just that step up. I would say it's actually a step up from what you would look at with, say, Flames of War to that next level of wargaming.
Yeah.
And just seeing that overall tactical battlefield of land, air, sea. That, and they've been doing some resculpts for some of their older stuff, which have been turning out beautifully as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to see it in the finalists. Okay, gentlemen, thank you for that rundown. Now all that's left to do is announce the winner. A magnificent category, and certainly one of the favorites within the studio here at Beasts of War. We've had some great finalists, but again, there can only be one winner. And for 2014, the winner of Best Pulp, Punk, Horror, or Weird Game is Weird's MALIFAUX. Hearty congratulations to the guys over at Weird. You've made a magnificent game, and we're looking forward to seeing what you guys come out with in 2015. Right, now it's time to move on to our final category. The finalists for Best Historical Game of 2014 are Wargamer Company by Fire and Sword, Warlord Games, Bolt Action, Battlefront Miniatures, Flames of War, Gripping Beast, Saga. So I'm joined by John and Justin for the mighty historical category.
Yep.
I say I'm joined by John and Justin. I'm also joined by John's helmet. Which do you want? I'm going to put on this time. I think I deserve to wear the helmet.
Oh, maybe just tilt back slightly. You might
There.
be
What
killing
about
your
that
eyes.
there? Zombie!
No! Ah.
Okay, so this is the historical category. Our finalists. I want to chat a little bit about them.
Yeah.
I want to kick off by Fire and Sword. Okay, a very popular game. It has a really strong following that is building. I'm getting a terrible echo in my ears with this. How do people even wear these? By Fire and Sword is it's a game that's set in the 17th century. It was nominated for an Origins Award and actually won the I think it was the fan favorites that it
cool.
won. So it's a game that has a following that is very, very proactive in its promotion. And once again, we see that because they've made it through to the finalists on this category. This year, however, they successfully funded a Kickstarter called The Deluge, which was 1665 or 1655 to 1660. And it unlocked 3 new armies, which I believe were Transylvania, the Holy Roman Empire, and Brandenburg. So it's not a period that I particularly know a lot about, actually. But it is something that I find very, very interesting. And I watched that Kickstarter with some interest, and it's probably of the historical games that have gained in popularity over this past year, it's probably one of the more niche of the historical games. So by all means, though, it'll be interesting to see what you folk in the community feel about it, and what are the key defining moments of that period that kind of non-historical people like myself are able to kind of latch onto.
What, recognize and use as a jump off point?
Yeah, it's a means to get into to get into the game. Next up, we have Bolt Action.
My game of the year. Definitely.
A game that I've dropped headfirst into this year because of him.
Exactly. I dragged him in. We started playing.
Yes, and I was doing what you were doing last year with Flames War with Bolt Action. It's just me going, historical. And then, John, I got my German army, got them on the table, and it was suddenly, actually, hang on, something's going on here.
There's something about a game that when you can look at it and then you open a book and you see some of the reality behind it and you suddenly go, oh, I like this because now I can imagine that happening. I know what that machine gun looks like and sounds like. I know what that tank looks like and sounds like. And you just go mad with it. You know, it's a lot of people think historical gaming is restrictive because when you look at the book, you go, there's only so many images, there's only so many ways you can paint something.
Yeah.
But when you expand out and you look and you research, you suddenly go, well, there isn't exactly a wrong answer to anything. So you just go for it and just have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and then the actual dice mechanic for your activations, one of the finest things we have seen in a long, long time.
Absolutely.
You know, it doesn't matter if it came out last year or earlier, still one of the finest mechanics I've ever seen put into a game.
Certainly one of the high points of 2014 for Bolt Action was the introduction of Tank War.
Oh, yes. Oh, very,
Very much
yes.
so. It gave me an excuse to buy more tanks.
As if you
Like I
need
need
an
one.
excuse.
Like I need an excuse, but there is a large and growing collection.
Yes, there are many, many Shermans at John's place, and I do believe there will be many, many Panzer IVs and Panthers on their way to me in the new year.
Well, Tank War
get them
introduced basically the whole opportunity to do full mechanized battle
Oh, yeah.
at 28 mil. I don't think it can be understated just how epic that particular addition to Bolt Action is.
And let's not forget, a lot of those tanks are now coming out in plastic. So suddenly those people who don't like working with resin and metal are just going, wait, this is a hard plastic kit? Haha, gimme.
Exactly. But what Tank War really did was take the core rulebook and just flipped it on its head. Because the core rulebook is basically infantry supported by a tank. Whereas the other way around now, it's a tank platoon being supported by infantry. And both are realistic and both are historical. And both
Infantry? In Tank War? I think not.
No, Warren,
you
for
can
you.
if you want, but you probably won't.
I definitely won't.
Actually, I know that you will, because you'll probably end up playing Russians and you'll have Russian tank riders on your T-34s.
I don't even need to play Russians to have tank riders. Remember, my Stugs can be loaded with tank riders.
Okay.
Okay, moving on, we have Flames of War. Fully expected these guys to be in. They've had a massive year. They've covered the Arab-Israeli War. They've moved into World War I, and they've had Operation Barbarossa come out towards the latter end of the year. It's the game that got me into historical. It is my first love. I love the rules. I love the presentation style.
And you love being able to drop into any period of World War II. Yes, they're looking at other stuff, but their heart and soul is always going to be that big, broad World War II, database that they can draw from.
Well, the great thing about Flames of War is they do the entire war.
Exactly.
They have you can pick up a book and it'll say, this book covers these 2 months of the war, and you think, only 2 months? And you look through it and you go, actually, there's a lot in here and a lot of it transferable. But the more books you get, the more you realize that it's probably one of the most comprehensive World War II games out there.
Yeah.
Because it does cover so much.
Yeah, and it does allow you to drop into any point of the war pretty much.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting to see how the rules have been able to undertake different periods, like World War One, like Vietnam. If you haven't checked it out, go and check out the Beast of War Nam Week, because it was fabulous. But it's also been able to be brought right up to the more modern period with that Arab-Israeli war, where we're starting to see tanks that basically are the templates for the tanks that we even have today.
And we did see a lot more come out for it this year as well. So that alone is going to keep them in the contention and keep them running toward being on the nomination. So, like you said, no surprise that they're here.
Exactly.
Our final finalist is, of course, Saga. Now, I know in one of the previous shows, I alluded to the fact that Dark Ages have definitely started to appeal to me now. And I've got to say, after talking with Ben, one of our team members, Saga is really, really appealing to me. It's a Dark Age game. It's again proven a very popular entry point. It has this scalable thing going on where it can scale with your collection. So it can start out very small and start to build up. And Ben has been telling me that it has some really interesting board game style elements to the actual game, which for me, I'm very, very interested in trying out. I love the whole kind of Vikings.
Yeah, basically you want to be walking around in a loincloth with a big two-handed axe, screaming at the top of your lungs.
Yeah, that's a Friday night for me. That's a Friday night.
A very disturbing image.
Well,
be a service.
What I love about it is we have seen it develop, especially we get first-hand experience of it whenever we go to Salute. And, they had this big Viking hall. And just watching the game being played in and around that, you just thought to yourself, oh, this is
that
just
epic backdrop.
It is just absolutely awesome. So definitely a game to watch. There was also the appearance of the Crescent and the Cross, which is a big update for Saga. It basically has now opened it up to the Crusades. Which, okay, I've got to say, we've talked about kind of key moments in history where if you struggle with history, because there's
everyone will know.
There's a huge amount of history, John.
Yeah.
There's too much history for any one man's head. I have to say I truly believe that. But if you can find key moments in history, that's enough for you to get enough of a hook to start exploring it. So for me, one of these key moments is the Crusades. I find the Crusades to be a fascinating concept. And I'm calling it a concept because I don't really know or understand a lot of the historical background of it at the moment. But in popular culture, we all know about the Templars. We know about the Knights of Ni.
Was it not the Knights of Neep?
So, but based on that, I can absolutely see desert boards, Saladin, the Templars, and shrubberies. I'm really
every time you
it.
kill someone, is it just going to be before you roll the dice? I demand a shrubbery. I did not get a shrubbery.
You get a 2+ to every roll if you have a shrubbery. So anyway, that is our historical finalists. I'm absolutely looking forward to 2015 from the historical perspective. I really am hoping to start having a look at the Dark Age and the more ancient side of things. I really want to start exploring that. But we have so much potential coming out of Flames of War, Bolt Action. Who knows where we will be this time next year. Anyway, it is our final category. Time to announce our final winner. It's our final award of the evening. Yes, it's the 2014 Best Historical Game. We had 4 finalists, 2 of which were industry behemoths. The winner is Warlord Games Bolt Action. Massive congratulations to the guys over at Warlord. We cannot wait to see what you guys come up with in 2015. How you're going to top Tank War, I don't know, but I'm sure you're working on it. So that wraps up the 2014 Annual Gaming Awards from Beast of War. What a year. What a year. It's been a year of amazing products. It's been a year of amazing games. And for us personally, it's been quite the year. You know, from starting out the year wondering whether Beasts of War would even survive as a project, we've been able to push with the support of our community to try and grow it and expand it. And here's fingers crossed that we can continue to do that in 2015.
It's been such a fast year. It's just like that. It doesn't seem...
Yeah, it feels like yesterday we were packing up the lorry.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a year ago we were pretty much up to our necks in mud building Studio One.
Building Studio One.
Oh, yeah.
And now we've got Studio One and Riverside. I would like to take this opportunity to put a special thank you to the community members who got together with us in the background to create and shape these awards. Their help was absolutely essential to making this work.
And I'd like to thank all of you sitting at home who voted to get us a list of nominees to begin with, and then voted again in your thousands and thousands and thousands to get us a list of winners out of the nominations. I mean, truly amazing the amount of feedback and engagement from you guys.
Absolutely.
And lastly, I'd like to congratulate every company who was nominated because it shows you have great stuff. I would especially like to congratulate the guys who were nominated into the final 4, but ultimately the greatest congrats go to the guys who won. You guys have done amazing work this year. Keep it up in 2015, and hopefully we should see you guys on here next year, possibly winning again.
Yeah. To those companies, you know, do keep it up. You make all of our lives, you know, that little bit more special. You allow us to escape the daily grind of things. You allow us to explore new universes and timelines and all sorts of things. And to you guys in the community, you know, thank you. Keep on doing what you're doing. This industry is going from strength to strength, primarily off the support that each and every one of you are giving to it. Thank you very much for allowing us to host with you tonight and to show you our community's take on the industry for 2014. It's been an absolute pleasure. I'm sure for you guys, you've enjoyed it as well.
Yes, thank you very much for hosting, Warren. Fantastic job.
We're all out of the drink.
Just about, yes.
So I think it's now time to say good night and rock on for 2015.